I never thought I'd find myself digging through my parents' office at midnight, but desperation makes you do crazy things. The dim light from my phone barely illuminated the stacks of papers as I searched for my college acceptance letter. Mom had misplaced it earlier that day, right after I'd mentioned needing their financial information for my student aid application. My name is Cal, and until tonight I'd been the perfect daughter, quiet, obedient, and painfully invisible next to my golden boy brother Jasper. The drawer creaked as I pulled it open, making me freeze. Down the hall, my parents' steady snoring continued. I let out a breath and kept searching. That's when I saw it, a thick envelope with my grandparents' return address postmarked 3 months ago. Strange. I hadn't received anything from them recently. My hand shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and what looked like legal documents. The first line made my stomach drop. "Dearest Callahan, we want you to know about the education fund we've set up for you." Education fund? What education fund? I kept reading, my vision blurring as I took in the details. $20,000 specifically earmarked for my college education. The letter was dated well before my college acceptance, back when I was still trying to convince my parents that university was worth considering. "We know your dreams are bigger than the small-town life your parents envision," my grandmother wrote. "This money is yours to use, no strings attached." The documents showed everything: account numbers, transfer details, signatures. But I'd never seen a penny of it. My parents had received this months ago and never said a word. A floorboard creaked behind me. "What are you doing in here?" I spun around to find my mother in her silk robe, arms crossed. The letter crinkled in my tight grip. "When were you going to tell me about this?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. She glanced at the paper and something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe? Disappeared so fast I might have imagined it. "That money is being put to better use," she said, reaching for the letter. "Your brother's new business venture. You gave my college fund to Jasper?" The words felt like glass in my throat. "Keep your voice down," she hissed. "This is what's best for the family. Jasper has real potential. And I don't." "Don't be dramatic, Callahan. You can take classes at the community college like we discussed. Jasper needs this investment for his future. For his engagement to Serena. You understand that, don't you?" I looked at my mother, really looked at her. Her perfectly styled hair, even at midnight. The way she held herself like she was always being photographed for the local society pages. Everything had to be perfect in her world, and somehow I'd never quite fit into that picture. "No," I said quietly. "I don't understand at all." I folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket before she could grab it. "I'm calling Grandma and Grandpa in the morning." "You will do no such thing." Her voice had that sharp edge I knew too well. "This is a family matter, and it's been decided." "You're right about one thing," I said, moving past her toward the door. "It is a family matter. And Grandma and Grandpa are family too. Callahan Reed, if you walk out that door..." I didn't hear the rest. I was already halfway down the hall, my heart pounding with a strange mix of anger and something else, freedom maybe. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother clearly, and with that clarity came a decision. I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. Grandma Maeve's guest room felt more like home after just 3 days than my old bedroom ever did. The morning sun streamed through lace curtains as I unpacked the last of my clothes, trying not to think about the dozen missed calls from my mother. The sound of china clinking downstairs drew me to the kitchen, where Grandma was setting out her good tea service. She looked up with that knowing smile of hers. "Your mother's coming over," she said, placing a third cup on the tray. "Thought we might need the fancy cups for this one." My stomach clenched. "How did she..." "Small town, sweetheart. The Martha from the grocery store saw you helping your grandfather with the groceries yesterday." She paused, adjusting a napkin. "Your mother wasn't pleased to hear it from her instead of us." "Of course. Heaven forbid the town gossips catch wind of any Reed family drama before my mother could control the narrative." Right on cue, the doorbell chimed. Grandma squeezed my hand before going to answer it. I heard them in the foyer, my mother's practiced laugh, the click of her heels on hardwood. When they entered the kitchen, Mom was wearing her charity board smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Callahan," she said, as if we were meeting at a garden party. "This little tantrum has gone on long enough, don't you think?" "Lila," Grandma's voice carried a warning. "That's not why we're here." "You're right, Mother." Mom sat primly at the kitchen table. "We're here because my daughter is being unreasonable about family obligations." "Unreasonable?" I couldn't help but laugh. "You stole my college fund and gave it to Jasper. How is that reasonable? We redistributed family resources where they would do the most good." She stirred her tea with precise movements. "Your brother's business venture will benefit everyone. The connections he's making through Serena's family alone." "I don't care about connections." Teacup rattled as I set it down too hard. "I care about my future. The one you decided wasn't worth investing in. The community college has perfectly adequate programs." "That's enough." Grandma's voice cut through the tension. She turned to my mother. "Lila, do you remember when you were 18? When you wanted to study art in Paris?" Mom's hand froze mid-stir. "That was different." "Was it?" "'Cause I remember a young woman with dreams bigger than this town, who cried for days when her father said no." Grandma leaned forward. "You swore you'd never do that to your own children." "I grew up," Mom snapped. "I learned what really matters. Kata security." "Living someone else's life?" I asked quietly. The look she gave me could have frozen hell. "You have no idea what sacrifice means, what it takes to maintain a family's position in society. Your father and I have worked too hard to let you throw away everything on some foolish dream of independence." "The only thing foolish here," Grandma said, "is thinking you can control your children's lives forever." Mom stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I see you've both made up your minds. But remember this, Callahan, actions have consequences. If you insist on this path, don't expect any support from your father and me." "You mean like the support you've already shown by stealing my college fund?" She flinched just slightly, but I saw it. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, regret maybe, or fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that perfect mask again. "I'll see myself out," she said, turning toward the door. She paused, not looking back. "Your brother's engagement dinner is Saturday. The whole town will be there. It would look better if you attended." After she left, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Grandma wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "Well," she said, "that went about as well as expected." "I don't understand her," I whispered. "How can she just? Your mother lost herself a long time ago, trying to be what everyone else wanted." Grandma picked up the untouched teacups. "The question is, are you ready to fight for who you want to be?" I thought about the engagement dinner, about facing the whole town while playing happy families, about Jasper, who probably had no idea what our parents had done. "Yes," I said. "I think I am." Country club ballrooms sparkled with champagne flutes and fake smiles. I adjusted my thrift store dress, feeling like an imposter among the designer labels and pearl necklaces. Jasper's engagement dinner was exactly the kind of event my mother lived for, all surface shine and strategic social positioning. "Cal!" Jasper's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. He weaved through the crowd, Serena by his side. "You came." "Wouldn't miss it," I lied, accepting his hug. Close, I noticed the shadows under his eyes, poorly concealed. Serena squeezed my hand. "I'm so glad you're here. Jasper's been worried sick since he left home." Before I could respond, Mom materialized beside us, perfect smile firmly in place. "Darling, the Walshes want to discuss the wedding venue." "And Callahan," her voice cooled several degrees, "your father needs a word." Dad waited by the bar, nursing what I knew wouldn't be his first scotch of the evening. His shoulders were tight under his expensive suit. The prodigal daughter returns, he said, not looking at me. Dad, your mother tells me you're being difficult about the wedding arrangements. I blinked. What arrangements? Don't play dumb, Callahan. The loan paperwork needs your signature. The Walshes are contributing significantly, but we need to match their investment to maintain appearances. What loan paperwork? He finally turned to me, irritation clear in his expression. The papers we discussed last week about using your trust fund as collateral. Your mother said she explained everything. The room tilted slightly. My trust fund? The one Grandma and Grandpa set up for my education? The one you and Mom already gave to Jasper? Dad's face reddened. Keep your voice down. This isn't the place. When is the place? My voice shook. When you forged my signature. When you've stolen even more of my future. Everything we do is for this family's future, he hissed. Your brother's marriage to Serena will secure our position. Your position, I corrected. Not mine. Never mine. A sharp laugh escaped me, drawing curious glances from nearby guests. You know what's funny? I came tonight hoping there was still something worth saving. But you're still trying to take what little I have left. You're being melodramatic. Is everything all right? Jasper appeared beside us, frowning. Perfect timing, I said, turning to my brother. Did you know about my trust fund? The one funding your new business? Jasper's confusion seemed genuine. What trust fund? The education fund from Grandma and Grandpa. Mom and Dad redirected it to your business venture months ago. And now they want me to take out a loan for your wedding. Color drained from Jasper's face. He turned to our father. Dad, this isn't the time or place. When is? I demanded again, louder this time. Heads turned. Mom appeared, panic flickering behind her perfect mask. Callahan, you're making a scene. No, Mother. I'm finally speaking up. I faced the growing crowd of onlookers. You want to talk about family obligations? Let's talk about how you stole my college fund. How you're trying to force me into debt for a wedding I can't afford. How everything in this family revolves around keeping up appearances while you tear us apart from the inside. That's enough. Dad grabbed my arm. Jasper stepped between us. Let her go. The room fell silent. Mom's carefully constructed world cracked visibly as whispers started. I'm done, I said quietly, pulling free. Done being the family's sacrifice. Done watching you destroy everything real in the name of appearances. I turned to Jasper. I'm sorry. I love you, but I can't watch this anymore. As I walked out, I heard Serena's voice behind me. Jasper, did you know about this? And then my brother's response, soft but clear. No. But I'm going to find out. Sighed in the cool night air, my hands shook as I texted Grandma to pick me up. The facade had finally cracked, and through that crack I caught a glimpse of something I hadn't expected, not just anger or revenge, but the possibility of truth setting us all free, even if it had to break us first. The email from Sterling and Associates lit up my phone screen at 3 a.m. I'd been obsessively checking since submitting my internship application last week, but now that the moment had arrived, my finger hovered uncertainly over the notification. Grandpa Arthur found me on the back porch an hour later, still staring at my unopened email. Can't sleep? He settled into the chair beside me, offering a steaming mug of cocoa. They offered me the internship, I said quietly. His face broke into a proud smile. That's wonderful news. It's in New York. Ah. He understood immediately. New York meant leaving everything behind, the town, the drama, the constant weight of family expectations. It meant really choosing myself for the first time. My phone buzzed. Jasper's name flashed on the screen. You should answer it, Grandpa said, squeezing my shoulder as he stood. Some bridges are worth keeping, even if others need to burn. I waited until he was inside before accepting the call. Hey, stranger, Jasper's voice was soft, careful. Got a minute? Sure. I've been doing some digging since the engagement dinner. He paused. There's more, Cal. More than just your trust fund. My stomach clenched. What do you mean? Mom and Dad. They've been using Grandma and Grandpa's money for years. Country club memberships, their social circle, my private school tuition, it all came from the Sterling Family Trust. They've been living on credit and appearances. Cocoa turned bitter in my mouth. How did you find out? Serena's father is a financial advisor. He's been helping me understand the business venture Dad wants me to take over. His voice cracked slightly. It's all smoke and mirrors, Cal. They're drowning in debt, and they're trying to use my marriage to Serena to save themselves. Pieces clicked into place: Mom's obsession with status, Dad's drinking, their desperate need to control everything and everyone around them. Does Serena know? Yes. He sounded tired. She's been amazing, actually. Wants me to walk away from all of it, start fresh. Are you going to? A long pause. I don't know. But there's something else you should know. Mom's planning to contest Grandma and Grandpa's trust. She's claiming they're mentally unfit to manage their own finances. The world tilted sideways. She can't do that. She's already filed the paperwork. That's why I'm calling. You need to warn them. My free hand clenched into a fist. When? The hearing's next week. Cal, I'm so sorry. I should have seen what they were doing sooner. The unopened email seemed to pulse on my screen. New York suddenly felt like both an escape and an abandonment. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know, he repeated. But whatever happens, I want you to know I'm on your side this time. Really on your side. After we hung up, I finally opened the email. The internship offer was everything I dreamed of: prestigious firm, excellent pay, potential for permanent position after graduation. My ticket out. But Grandma and Grandpa's faces flashed in my mind. They'd taken me in, supported my dreams, given me back my sense of worth. And now my mother was trying to destroy them too. My fingers moved across the screen, typing out a response to Sterling and Associates. Thank you for the incredible opportunity. I need to request a delayed start date of 3 weeks. The sun was rising when Grandma found me still on the porch. One look at my face and she knew something was wrong. What is it, sweetheart? We need to talk, I said, standing up. All of us. And then we need to call a lawyer. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll put on some coffee. This sounds like a conversation that needs caffeine. As she turned to go inside, I caught her arm. Grandma, thank you. For everything. She smiled, but her eyes were sad. Family protects family, dear. The real kind of family, not the kind that just looks good in photographs. I looked down at my phone one last time, at the acceptance email in Jasper's text thread. Sometimes choosing yourself means choosing who to fight for. And sometimes revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting free. Courthouse steps felt endless as I climbed them beside our lawyer, Sarah Chen. My mother's accusations of mental incompetence against my grandparents had spread through town like wildfire, exactly as she'd planned. Now everyone was choosing sides. Remember, Sarah said, adjusting her briefcase, let me do the talking. Your mother's lawyer will try to provoke an emotional response. Inside, Mom sat with her perfectly styled hair and designer suit, looking more like she was attending a charity luncheon than trying to destroy her own parents. Dad slouched beside her, already showing signs of a hangover. Grandma and Grandpa walked in with quiet dignity, holding hands. The sight of them made my throat tight. All rise, the bailiff called. The hearing started with Mom's lawyer painting a picture of elderly confusion and financial mismanagement. He presented bank statements showing large withdrawals, my college fund, conveniently omitting that my parents had redirected it to Jasper's business. Then came the character assassination. We have multiple witnesses, Mom's lawyer declared. Who can testify to Callahan Reed's manipulation of her grandparents, taking advantage of their declining faculties for her own financial gain. My hands clenched under the table. Sarah touched my arm in warning. Furthermore, he continued, Mrs. Reed has evidence that her daughter has a history of emotional instability and poor decision-making. A manila envelope appeared. Inside were printouts of private text messages between Jasper and me discussing our parents' financial schemes. Messages I thought were secure. Mom's face remained perfectly composed, but I caught the slight upturn of her lips. She'd been monitoring our phones all along. The judge reviewed the documents while my stomach churned. Then he asked the question that changed everything. Where is Jasper Reed? These messages indicate he has relevant testimony. My son is unavailable, Your Honor, Mom said smoothly. He's focused on his upcoming wedding and new business venture. Courthouse doors opened. Actually, Jasper's voice rang out, I'm right here. He walked in with Serena beside him, both in professional attire. Mom's mask cracked for the first time as her golden child approached the bench. Your Honor, Jasper said, I have documentation proving that my parents have been systematically draining my grandparents' accounts for years, using the money to maintain their social status while accumulating massive debt. Mom's lawyer jumped up. Objection. This is irrelevant to the competency hearing. I'll allow it, the judge said, studying the new papers Jasper presented. I watched my mother's face as her carefully constructed world began to crumble. Her eyes darted between Jasper and me, calculating, searching for control. Jasper, she said, her voice honey-sweet. Sweetheart, you don't understand the complexity. I understand perfectly, he cut her off. I understand how you manipulated all of us. How you're trying to declare your own parents incompetent to cover up your financial fraud. How you monitored our phones and used our private conversations against us. The judge cleared his throat. Mrs. Reed, these allegations are serious. If verified, they could result in criminal charges. Mom stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Everything I've done has been for this family. To maintain our position, our respect. No, I said, finally finding my voice. It was for your position, your respect, and you were willing to destroy everyone else to keep it. She turned to me, eyes blazing. You ungrateful little. That's enough, the judge interrupted. Based on the evidence presented, I'm dismissing the competency petition. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into the financial allegations. Mrs. Reed, Mr. Reed, I suggest you retain criminal defense counsel. As security approached my parents, Mom's perfect mask shattered completely. You'll regret this, she hissed at me. Both of you will regret choosing them over family. No, Mother, Jasper said quietly. We're choosing real family over appearances. There's a difference. Standing between my brother and my grandparents, I watched my parents being led to separate police cars. The victory felt hollow, tasting more like ashes than justice. You okay? Jasper asked. I looked at my phone, at the delayed internship acceptance, still waiting for a final answer. I will be. We all will be. Sometimes winning means losing everything you thought you needed, only to find what you really wanted was there all along. The bail hearing was set for Thursday, but Mom managed to get released early. Money talks, even when you're being investigated for financial fraud. I shouldn't have been surprised to find her waiting in Grandma's kitchen Tuesday morning, perfectly composed in her Chanel suit. We need to discuss the wedding, she said, as if the past week hadn't happened. Grandma stood protectively beside me. Lila, you shouldn't be here. It's my daughter's wedding, Mom replied smoothly. Of course I should be here. I'm not getting married, I said, confused. Her smile turned sharp. No, dear. Jasper's wedding. Though I suppose you wouldn't know the details since you've been so preoccupied with destroying our family. She pulled out a thick folder and placed it on the kitchen table. These are the loan documents you signed last year. The ones funding the wedding venue, the catering, everything. I never signed anything. Really? She spread out several papers, each bearing my signature. The bank seems to think otherwise. My blood ran cold as I examined the documents. The signatures looked real, perfect copies of my own handwriting. When did you? You left so many school permission slips lying around over the years, she said casually. It was simple enough to practice. Grandma reached for the phone. I'm calling Sarah. Go ahead, Mom said. But consider this, a fraud investigation will delay the wedding. Serena's family will withdraw their support. Jasper will lose everything he's worked for. Is that what you want, Callahan? To destroy your brother's happiness too? My hands shook as I looked at the loan amounts. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, all in my name. You're bluffing, I said, but my voice wavered. Am I? She stood, straightening her jacket. The Walsh family values reputation above all. One hint of scandal and they'll pull Serena out faster than you can say family shame. Just ask your father, he's already drinking himself to sleep over what you've done to us. What I've done? The words caught in my throat. You're the one who what? Protected this family? Maintained our position? Everything I did was for you children, and this is how you repay me. Her voice cracked, showing real emotion for the first time. You have until tomorrow to withdraw the fraud allegations. Otherwise, I submit these documents to the bank. After she left, I sank into a kitchen chair, the weight of her threat crushing my chest. We'll fight this, Grandma said firmly. Sarah will know what to do. My phone buzzed, a text from Jasper. Just heard from Mom. Is it true about the loans? Another buzz. Serena's parents are asking questions. They're talking about postponing everything. A third, Cal, please. I can't lose this too. I stared at the loan documents, at my forged signature repeated over and over. Mom had planned this perfectly, my word against hers, with Jasper's happiness as collateral damage. Cal. Grandma touched my shoulder. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about Jasper, I said quietly. About how he stood up for me in court. About how he's finally happy with Serena. This isn't your responsibility. Isn't it? I looked up at her, feeling the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. Mom's right about one thing, the Walshes will run at the first sign of scandal. Jasper will lose Serena, his future, everything. And what about your future? Grandma demanded. Your internship? Your dreams? I touched the loan papers, tracing my forged signature. Maybe some dreams cost too much. My phone buzzed again, the internship coordinator asking for my final decision. Cursor blinked at me, waiting for a response that would either save my brother's happiness or preserve my own future. Sometimes the hardest choices aren't between right and wrong, but between two different kinds of sacrifice. And sometimes revenge isn't worth the collateral damage it leaves behind. I picked up my phone and started typing, knowing that whatever I decided, something irreplaceable would be lost. The church bells were already ringing when I pulled into the parking lot. Guests in designer suits and summer dresses filed through the heavy wooden doors while I sat in my car, staring at the manila envelope on the passenger seat. Inside was every piece of evidence Sarah had gathered, years of forged signatures, fraudulent accounts, and financial manipulation. Everything needed to bring my mother down once and for all, and destroy Jasper's wedding in the process. I grabbed the envelope and headed for the church's side entrance. The bridal suite door was ajar, voices drifting out. Can't reach the bank until Monday, Mom was saying. Everything's arranged, Jasper. Just trust me. Like I trusted you about Cal's college fund? I froze outside the door. Your sister made her choices, Mom replied smoothly. But today is about you and Serena. Don't let Cal's drama ruin this too. Drama? Jasper's voice cracked. You forged her signature, Mom. To put her in debt for my wedding without even telling me. I did what was necessary. No. Serena's voice now, sharp and clear. You did what was easy. Using Cal to fix your mistakes was easy. Lying to everyone was easy. I pushed the door open. Mom stood in her mother of the groom dress, perfect as always, while Jasper and Serena faced her in their wedding attire. Cal. Mom's smile didn't reach her eyes. I thought we had an understanding about today. We do. I held up the envelope. I'm here to make things right. By destroying your brother's wedding? How selfless of you. Actually, I turned to Jasper. I'm here to save it. I pulled out the bank documents, the real ones showing Mom's years of fraud. These prove everything. The forged signatures, the stolen money, all of it. Mom's mask cracked slightly. Callahan, think about what you're doing. I have. I handed the papers to Jasper. But there's something else you should see first. I produced a second document, my withdrawal from the fraud investigation, already signed and dated. What is this? Jasper asked. My surrender. I met Mom's startled gaze. You win, Mother. The investigation ends today. The loans stay in my name. Your reputation stays intact. Cal, no, Serena stepped forward. You can't. I can. And I will. I turned back to Mom. But here's what happens next. You're going to sign over your share of Grandma and Grandpa's trust to me. All of it. And you're going to leave them and me alone. Mom's laugh was brittle. Or what? Or these papers go to the police anyway. Maybe not today, maybe not this week, but someday. When you least expect it. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering when everything will fall apart. You wouldn't I? You taught me well, Mother. About leverage. About control. About using people's fears against them. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of manipulation and hurt. Finally, Mom reached for her designer purse, pulled out a pen. You've become quite calculating, Callahan. I learn from the best. She signed the trust transfer with her perfect signature, her real one this time. As she handed it back, something flickered in her eyes. Pride? Regret? I couldn't tell anymore. The ceremony starts in 10 minutes, she said quietly. I should check on the guests. After she left, Jasper grabbed my arm. Cal, you can't do this. Those loans are worth it, I finished. Your happiness is worth it, but your future is still mine to choose. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Besides, I already accepted the internship. Turns out New York firms pay pretty well. Serena hugged me. You're something else, Cal Reed. Speaking of which, I pulled away, straightening Jasper's bow tie. Don't you two have a wedding to get to? As the music started playing and Jasper took his place at the altar, I slipped into a back pew. Mom sat in the front row, perfect posture, perfect smile, perfectly alone. Sometimes winning isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about choosing which battles matter most and finding victory in letting go of the rest. 6 months after the wedding, New York felt more like home than our small town ever had. My apartment was tiny, but the view of the city lights made up for it. I was reviewing case files for tomorrow's meeting when my phone buzzed with Jasper's FaceTime call. Aunt Cal. Serena's voice came through first, followed by the image of her holding up a sonogram. Say hello to your future niece. Papers scattered as I sat up straight. A girl? When did you find out? This morning. Jasper appeared beside her, grinning. We wanted you to be the first to know. Have you told Mom and Dad? His smile faded slightly. No. And we're not going to, not yet. Dad's still in rehab and Mom, well, you know Mom. I did know. The last I'd heard, she was living in a smaller house across town, still attending charity functions but no longer running them. Queen had lost her crown, but she was hanging on to what remained of her kingdom. Grandma and Grandpa are coming for dinner, Serena said, changing the subject. They miss you. I miss them too. I glanced at my calendar, marked with upcoming court dates and client meetings. But this case is huge and nothing, Jasper cut in. Family dinner next weekend. No excuses. Family dinner. The words still made my stomach clench, even now. But when I looked at their faces, Jasper's quiet strength, Serena's warm smile, I realized the phrase had taken on a new meaning. Okay, I said. Next weekend. After we hung up, I found myself pulling out the letter that had arrived last week. Mom's perfect handwriting on expensive stationery, still unopened. The doorbell rang before I could change my mind about reading it. When I opened the door, Sarah Chin stood there, looking exactly as she had in the courthouse months ago. Your mother's contesting the trust transfer, she said without preamble. She can't. The paperwork was filed incorrectly. Deliberately, I suspect. Sarah's eyes narrowed. She played us, Cal. She knew all along there was a loophole. I should have felt angry, betrayed, ready for another fight. Instead, I found myself laughing. What's funny? Sarah asked. All of it. I picked up Mom's letter from the coffee table. She never cared about the money. She cared about control. About having one last card to play. So, what do you want to do? I broke the seal on the letter, finally reading my mother's words. Dearest Callahan, you've become everything I feared, strong enough to break free, brave enough to choose your own path. Everything I never was. Trust is yours if you still want it. But I hope you've learned what I never could, that true worth isn't measured in bank accounts or social standing. You won, darling. Not because you beat me, but because you chose to walk away. Mom. I handed the letter to Sarah. File a countermotion. Not to keep the trust, but to split it, half to Jasper's baby, half to a scholarship fund for local students. Are you sure? After everything she did. I'm sure. I looked out at the city lights, thinking of Jasper's daughter, of choices and consequences, of the difference between revenge and redemption. Some victories aren't about winning or losing. They're about choosing who you want to become. Later that night, I sent 2 texts. To Jasper, your daughter's trust fund is taken care of. Tell her Aunt Cal says welcome to the family. And after a long pause, to Mom, thank you for the letter. Coffee next weekend? Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with lawyers or evidence, but with the choice to break cycles instead of people. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well on your own terms with the family you choose along the way.
Our desire to construct a large, new home had finally materialized, and I was ecstatic about the prospect of starting a new chapter in our life. But just as we were getting ready to celebrate, my in-laws unexpectedly made an appearance. They requested my parents to vacate the property and said, "We'll be moving in here," in a strong tone. I was shocked and looked to my husband for consolation, but all he could manage was a deep breath and a please do as they ask expression. Inform your folks politely. I felt a mixture of disbelief and resentment as I watched my in-laws excitedly unpack and settle into what was supposed to be our new home. Do you realize this is our house? In the hopes that they would realize my mistake, I asked. Tiffany is my name. I am 32 years old, and I have been happily married to Jesse for 4 years. Even though we are childless at this time, we have a loving and supportive relationship. I've been worried about my aging parents lately. I've been thinking a lot about their deteriorating mobility, which is why I suggested that Jesse and I move in with them to help them. Jess nodded without hesitation, understanding that having us around would help them and also provide us with peace of mind. He had replied, "It's a win-win situation," and I was incredibly appreciative of his sympathy and understanding. We thought about this strategy, but the practicalities were challenging. The distance between my family's home and the city makes commuting more difficult for us since none of us drives. It wasn't a good idea to move my parents into our tiny city rental either, especially because it was already small for the two of us. Thinking about having kids in the future would just make the space problem worse. In the face of these difficulties, I'd boldly suggested a solution. Why not construct a brand new house that could comfortably fit everyone? The thought brightened up Jesse's face. "What a great idea," he cried out. Inspired by his zeal, we set out to design and construct a house that would meet all of our requirements. My parents felt a little guilty at first for causing such trouble when I told them I was planning to build a house big enough for everyone. But as I explained why we were doing this, their fear became excitement, which made me feel so relieved and happy. Later, to finalize the details of our project, my husband and I went to a real estate company. Our top priorities were to select places that would make our daily trips easier and be close to train stations so that my parents could easily receive medical care. My parents seemed a little apprehensive about the prospect of moving in with us during our conversations regarding the features of the house. Fortunately, my spouse provided some wise counsel that made the preparation process go more smoothly. Our ideal house began to take shape as we moved forward, and the joy was evident. We were prepared to begin consulting with builders after completing our plans and engaging in lengthy web research. The preparations were almost complete, I said, admitting that house building was turning out to be more work than I had thought. Working and juggling this definitely slows down progress, my spouse continued, considering the difficulties we had. Our ideas required a significant amount of time and effort, and the outcomes were incredibly fulfilling. Our expectations were greatly surpassed by the precisely designed blueprint. To get to this conclusion, we spoke with a number of real estate brokers and worked through extensive internet research. All that was left to do was wait impatiently for our house to be finished. Though there was a lot of enthusiasm and anticipation, it would take some time. But as the project progressed, my in-laws started to get more interested. "We've heard that you're building a new home, dear. Is it correct?" they inquired one day. "Yes, that is accurate. We want to be done with it by the end of the year," I answered. "How lovely." They genuinely expressed interest in our endeavor when they said, "Jess's efforts and the way he keeps us updated with all the details are so impressive." Though surprised by my mother-in-law's unexpected desire to come see us soon, I gladly accepted. My husband and I decided to visit them during the next weekend. They smiled warmly at us, and the topic of our new home project soon came up. "Don't you think it's such a happy occasion to build a new house?" my father-in-law asked, sounding thoughtful as if he were thinking back on his own experiences. I answered, "Yes, we're very excited. We hope the construction wraps up smoothly and quickly so we can move in as soon as possible." We all laughed together at the thrilling trip that lay ahead. My mother-in-law was curious and said, "Could we see the blueprints?" My spouse responded by taking out his phone and displaying a picture of the design to them. "Well, it's pretty roomy," she said, "and so many rooms." "Yes, well, we'll be living with my parents, so we needed the extra space," I replied. My in-laws exchanged shocked looks with my spouse. They questioned, "You're all moving in together?" "Yes," my spouse replied. "Since my parents are getting older, we suggested living together, which led us to decide to build a new house." Their tone changed slightly, showing a trace of unease, to "Really? I see," they replied. I swiftly shifted the topic in an attempt to diffuse the situation. "How are you two doing? What state are you in physically?" "We're doing well. No major changes, Just the usual routine, they responded. But there was still curiosity regarding our plans. Please elaborate about the new home. Which room are your parents going to use? They asked. The mood had definitely changed, as my husband explained by pointing to the blueprint. Their expressions had tightened, though he seemed unaware of the shift. Still, we talked about the arrangement, thinking that maybe our mutual enthusiasm for the fresh starts would finally calm everyone down. I was concerned that my in-laws would think we were favoring my parents when they found out we were moving in with them. Though I felt a little guilty, I hoped they would respect our choice and take my parents' needs into account. But it was becoming clear that they were having difficulty accepting it. Our new home's building was proceeding without any problems, and we could see it getting closer to completion every time we visited. My spouse was always excited about getting settled right away, but like him, I struggled to balance my desire for everything to be perfect with my joy for our fresh start. My parents visited to check on the development around halfway through the construction. Their happiness and appreciation filled me with immense thankfulness that we were able to provide them this wonderful home. In the meantime, I discovered that my spouse had been spending practically every weekend lately with his parents. Are you planning to visit your parents again this weekend? I questioned him. Yes, indeed, he answered. When I mentioned how often he's been visiting since the beginning of the year, he said, I also want to express my gratitude to them. I've been trying to go see them on my days off because of this. Knowing what he was going to do, I inquired, should I come along? I was worried that his parents, who might have hoped to move in with us, would feel let out or disappointed. I reasoned that paying them a visit would be a nice act of kindness. But my spouse comforted me, saying, It's okay. I'm capable of handling things on my own, he said, heading to his parents' house. I committed to support him as needed and made the decision to respect his decision. Time passed quickly, and soon our new home was prepared. We were so excited to begin this new chapter together that on moving day, we packed the car with boxes and drove off to our new house. I couldn't help but utter the words, wow, our new home. As soon as we pulled up to our gorgeous new house, it represented the start of an entirely new chapter. I found myself daydreaming about our future there, picturing hosting family picnics and preparing meals while observing my spouse play with our future child in the backyard. My excitement was heightened even more by these ideas. That's when my folks called. They told us they would be delayed because of traffic when they were meant to move in with us. We should start getting settled in, they said, but I asked that we wait for you. His parents unexpectedly showed up there, much to my surprise, as I was about to share this sentiment with my spouse. I watched in shock as they grinned and came walking toward us after getting out of their automobile. Look at this magnificent house. It's impressive enough to show off to our friends, they exclaimed. Yes, it's the house that Jesse and I carefully planned, I replied. Tiffany, you have excellent taste, my mother-in-law complimented. Well, I suppose I can give her credit for that, I said, managing a thankful nod. To my astonishment, they began unloading a considerable amount of luggage from their car, leaving me baffled. I quickly asked my mother-in-law and father-in-law, why do you have so much stuff? What are you planning to do? Their reply caught me completely off guard. What do you mean? We're moving our things into this house, they said. You're planning to live here starting today, but you'll need to ask your parents to leave. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice tinged with disbelief and frustration. My mother-in-law then explained, as a new bride, it's customary to prioritize your husband's family. The unexpected twist left me struggling to reconcile the joy of our new beginning with the sudden challenge of balancing family expectations and our carefully laid plans. Feeling a wave of emotions, I turned to my husband for support when his parents declared that they should be the ones moving into the new house. Taking a deep breath, he told me, "Just let your parents know gently." I felt a rush of disbelief. This house was intended for me and my parents. "I can't accept this decision," I protested. His response came with visible irritation. "Didn't my mom just explain that it's natural for a wife to prioritize her husband's family? We can address your parents' situation later." I was stunned. It was painfully clear that my husband was either under heavy influence from his parents or shared their views, which were now glaringly apparent. "Come on, help with the moving," he urged as his parents began unloading their belongings, despite my parents and I not having set foot inside the house yet. "Oh, how wonderful! The interior is just splendid," they exclaimed eagerly, exploring the house. I confronted them. "Do you even know whose house this is?" "What?" they responded, clearly taken aback. After a brief pause, they turned to face me, asserting, "Whose house? Of course, it's Jess's house. Are you suggesting you have a claim to it? Since you and Jess are living here, and he's put so much into building this house, you have no right to make any claims without letting us explain first." It seemed my in-laws had jumped to conclusions and were quick to place blame on me, indicating that my husband hadn't shared the full details about our financial contributions to the house. "Why would your parents live in Jesse's house in the first place?" they said. "Indeed, it is peculiar," they added mockingly. "Poor Jesse, with such a demanding wife and parents." My breaking point had reached. Why do they blame me for their misinterpretations? "Jess ought to make up the difference if you plan to stay here," I said. "I've helped build this house," I said, shocking them with my assertion. "What is the amount that you say you have paid? It must be a little sum, perhaps $100, they jeered. My spouse said nothing, appearing uneasy. I faced him, posing a challenge. "Are you telling the truth? How big and powerful do you believe yourself to be?" Uncertain of what to say next, he hesitated. With an authoritative tone, my mother-in-law asked, "What are you insinuating?" Observing my spouse's unwillingness to confront the matter, I made the decision to make things clear for good. My savings were used exclusively to purchase this home. I want $460,000 back from you if you intend to reside here, covering the cost of the house. My in-laws looked genuinely surprised. Their eyes widened in shock, and their mouths hung open. They looked instantly to my spouse for approval. "Is this accurate, Jesse? Did Tiffany purchase this house?" they questioned, unable to accept the truth of the circumstance. My spouse gave a hesitant nod of agreement. "Yes, Tiffany did purchase the home. She recently got a promotion and now makes more money than I do." Then he revealed a more intimate detail. Yet, despite my extensive professional experience and distinguished university education, I recently committed a grave error at work. I lost my job and even had my pay reduced. I'm now making the same money as a new hire. As they took in this information, the room fell silent. We never thought Jesse would find himself in this predicament. There was a startled stillness for a moment, and then their attitude toward me changed radically. We sincerely apologized to Tiffany for our previous remarks. We got everything all wrong. With regretful and apologetic tones, they begged to be forgiven and allowed to remain in this mansion. My husband bowed deeply as he joined in as well. "Please accept my apologies for not informing you sooner. Permit us to remain with you here." I was shocked by their abrupt change in attitude and begged for forgiveness. They apologized, but I refused to back down. However much you beg, I am unable to accept this. In order to live with my parents, I'd built this house. There's no need in keeping this house if that's not feasible. I'll take $460,000 from you if you want to live here. We don't have that kind of money, they said, their expressions lowering. It appears that you will have to locate another place to go, I stated, adamant in my choice. Wait, they chimed in. We sold our previous home and moved out. My in-laws went into a desperation mode when they realized they would be forced out of our new home. Please allow us to stay, Tiffany. They begged. Your parents can live with us too. I found it impossible to imagine having both sets of parents live under one roof. I cannot concur with it. You should have some money left over if you sold your house. Why not use it to locate an apartment? I inquired. Tears filled their eyes at this. In actuality, we suffered a sizable loss on an unwise investment. We used the proceeds from the sale of our home and our retirement funds to settle that obligation. Nothing remains for us. My spouse and I are both retired, and she is too old to be working as a housewife. You hold our sole hope, they acknowledged. Their sincere request nonetheless. I believed that their poor money management was the cause of the predicament. Shouldn't you ask your son for assistance if you need it? I answered, I'm not in a position to help strangers. Aren't we family too? They questioned, a great deal of emotion in their voices. That is asking for too much. Could you please lend us a little assistance? They begged some more, but I refused. It's not feasible. Living with someone whose family is attempting to seize control of our house is unimaginable to me. I had an extreme fit of rage and blurted, Jesse, let's get a divorce. What? He cried out. I can't even think about a divorce. I apologize, but this is beyond forgiveness. Please go now, I commanded. While his parents persisted in pleading, my husband became anxious at the mere idea of divorce. But my resolution was set in stone. I told my in-laws, if you plan to stay here, I'll call the police. And they fled in terror. Shaken, my spouse objected, saying, I'm still your spouse. I ought to be allowed to remain here. I'll go to court if you persist. I responded with firmness. Realizing that a lawsuit could jeopardize his job, he quickly gathered his belongings and left. My parents came shortly after his departure, perplexed by his absence. When I told them what was going on, they were astonished but thanked me. They said, "Thank you for defending us." Before our baby was born, I was glad to have cut ties with such a self-centered in-law family, even if I wished my husband had been more tolerant. My divorce went through without a hitch, and I was back on my own again soon after. Now that pandemonium had been replaced by calm, I relished quiet days with my folks in our recently constructed home. My name is Alice. Who hasn't gone through difficult times. My dad was everything to me and my rock. It's just the two of us against the world, ever since Mom died when I was a tiny child. He constantly emphasized the value of education and did his best to save every penny I needed to pursue my college education. He would give me a wink and tell me, "You're going to make it, kiddo," while continuing to add small amounts of money to our tattered college fund jar. I gave him credence. Above all, I had faith in us. I enrolled at the nearby community college after high school with the goal of becoming well known in the investment management industry. I got to know Tom there. He was affable and disheveled, exuding a fresh out-of-bed charm that somehow did wonders on me. He belonged to my cohort. We hit it off right away, exchanging glances over lukewarm cafeteria coffee and laughs between lectures. Then the floor gave way under me. Dad died suddenly, without any prior notice. Our financial security vanished as well, like a house of cards in a breeze. The college money proved to be more wishful than practical. In addition to missing Dad and his advice, I had to come to terms with the fact that my time as a college student was running out. With perseverance and scraps, I made it through my first year, but as the money dried up, I had to drop out. The flat, a modest 3-bedroom in a dilapidated area of town, was Dad's gift to me. Though little, it was home. On a cold evening, Tom arrived at the apartment with his hand tucked into the pockets of his faded pants. With a glance around the room where the wallpaper was softly peeling at the corners, he said, "You live here alone, Alice?" "Yeah, just me now," I answered, attempting to tamp down a particularly disobedient wallpaper strip. "It's not much, but it's what I've got." After observing me for a while, he moved in closer and clasped my hands. "Alice, let's get married. I want to look after you. Here, let's begin our lives together." Yes, it was abrupt, but why start now when nothing in my life had ever been planned? I said, "Okay, Tom," and it felt appropriate. Our wait was short. With only a few people present, the wedding took place at City Hall and was as simple as they come. Tom's parents failed to appear. They had never really liked me. They'd whispered that I was too plain and that I couldn't hear them. It stung that none of us did. However, Tom returned the squeeze, whispering, "I love you. That is all that is important." We strolled back to my, now our, apartment after the ceremony. The sidewalk was covered in deep shadows by the late afternoon sun. Tom broke open a bottle of the least expensive champagne available at the corner store and gave each of us a shaky glass filled with frothy goodness. To us, he raised his glass in salute. With a taste of promise and fresh starts, the champagne fizzed on my tongue as I repeated the toast. I had a deal with Tom. As I settled the invoices, he would focus on the books. After he finished college, it would be my chance to pursue the degree I abandoned when life became too difficult. Easy enough, huh? Though nothing is ever so simple. So's what I also thought. I had 2 jobs. During the day, I worked as a grocery store cashier, where I had to cope with long lineups and occasionally late customers. At night, I changed into a waitress uniform and worked as a server at a nearby diner, where I served late-night drifters and truckers lousy burgers and lukewarm coffee. Even though it was exhausting, I persevered because I knew that one day I would return through those college doors. Tom, on the other hand, claimed to be knee-deep in his studies. But as they did, so did his demands. "When is dinner, Alice?" He would always grumble as soon as I dragged my tired body through the door. "I can't eat this fast food crap anymore. I need something decent, like Mom used to make." I would throw my keys on the table and bite back my irritated, tired rage. "Tom, you should try cooking it yourself." "I'm not your mother." He would frown and avert his eyes. "My goal in learning is to succeed in life. The very least you could do was have a tidy home." His words would ignite a fire in my chest, slicing through my fatigue. However, I would eat the response, worried about the rift it may create in our already brittle accord. Tom's folks weren't very helpful. Compared to my diner-stained clothing and high school certificate, they were well-educated and polished. They hardly ever acknowledged me. And when they did, it was always with a sly smile or a barely concealed criticism. "If you had completed your schooling, my love," Tom's mother would say, drinking her expertly prepared tea and peering over the rims of her glasses. Tom just nodded along, taking in their comments as if they were gospel, without even defending myself. He would spend evenings there more and more, running away from our small apartment and all of the obligations that came with it. Tom dropped another blow one evening while I was cleaning the grease from the diner under my fingernails. I'm spending the night with my parents, require a decent night's sleep, and a genuine study space. I may have slammed the bathroom cupboard a little too hard. Fine, do what you got to do. The words were piercing, stinging with all the things I was unable to express. I took comfort in my rituals as the days stretched into months. My occupation's monotonous duties helped me to forget about my growing difficulties at home. I went through the processes like a robot, scanning the objects, grinning, serving meals, cleaning up, rinsing, and repeating. After a very long night, I arrived home to find my apartment empty. Not sorry, Tom, just a note. A way to study. Ensure that tomorrow's dinner is prepared. I creased the message, the sheet severing in my hand. I gave myself a moment, alone myself in the dark light of our kitchen, to truly feel everything. The weariness, the loneliness, the boiling rage. I closed my eyes and leaned against the counter, trying not to cry aloud, but letting a silent one slip out. Eventually, Tom graduated after years of working 2 jobs and watched himself lose himself in his books. The news that Tom had almost instantly been hired by a prestigious company was a breath of fresh air in our otherwise stressful existence. Compared to my nightly tips at the cafe, his new employment came with a paycheck that felt like a lottery win. I remember sitting across from him at our small kitchen table one evening, the excitement bubbling up inside me. So with your new job, I was thinking it might be time for me to cut back at work and start looking at programs, to pick up where I left off. Tom didn't look up from his plate. Alice, we can't afford that. Every penny has to be accounted for. And with the way things are, you know how tight the budget is. His fork clattered against the plate, a harsh sound that matched his words. I leaned back, my heart sinking, but not yet defeated. I could keep one job, maybe just the day shifts. We'd still have a steady income, and I could manage night classes. He shook his head, his voice firm and dismissive. Just forget about college, Alice. We need stability, not more debts. It's not practical. The conversation ended there, but the argument continued in my head for days. Before I could press the issue further, I found out I was pregnant. Our daughter, Lily, became my new priority, and college faded into the background, a dream dissolved. Raising Lily was a joy, but it was also another chain tying me to routines and responsibilities I hadn't chosen alone. I continued working at the grocery store, my dreams shelved like the products I stopped. Tom's criticisms didn't stop with my shelved education. They seeped into my parenting. You're not doing it right, Alice. She needs to learn proper manners. Not whatever it is you're trying to teach her, Tom would say, barely looking up from his phone. I remember holding Lily close, whispering promises to her that I'd begun to doubt I could keep. It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. As Lily grew, Tom's parents became more involved. Their influence overshadowed mine. They paid for a fancy preschool, and every school event was an exhibition of their grandparental pride. One evening, Tom clearly explained a new rule. Alice, it's best if you don't come to the school events. The teachers, they have a certain expectation of family. We can't ruin Lily's opportunities. I felt the sting of those words, a slap dressed up as paternal concern. So what am I supposed to do? Just stay home and pretend I don't have a daughter who's growing up, learning things I'm not teaching her? becoming someone I barely know. It's for the best, was all he said, his indifference the final nail in the coffin of our once shared dreams. The years twisted along, and Tom's words had weight. Not the kind that anchors you in safety, but the kind that pulls you under. His sharp commands to our daughter, Lily, left marks, teaching her lessons of disrespect and disdain toward me, our mother. Don't bother telling her what to do. She listens to me, not you. It's for her own good. Tom snapped one evening when I suggested Lily might set the table. In front of Lily, his words were always like this. I watched, heart sinking, as my little girl's eyes hardened to match her father's. You don't know anything, Mom. Lally would toss at me when I asked for help around the house, her tone mimicking her father's, each word a barb. I tried to reach her, to bridge the widening gap with mother-daughter chats, but she only pulled further away, retreating to a world where I couldn't follow, a world painted by Tom and his parents. One humiliating afternoon brought everything painfully into focus. Lily had friends over, laughter and light voices echoing down the hallway of our home. I was cleaning when I bumped into them in the hall. Lily froze, her eyes darting between me and her friends. I smiled, wiping my hands on my apron, about to say hello, but before the words could form, Lily cut in. Oh, this is just our housekeeper. Her friends nodded, barely giving me a second glance as they shuffled past into Lily's immaculately kept room, off limits to the likes of me. The door clicked shut, and the muffled bursts of teenage giggles were like needles to my chest. I retreated to the kitchen, sinking against the fridge as tears betrayed my resolve not to let this break me. I was her mother, not some dismissed servant in my own home. That evening, I confronted Tom, my voice shaking but firm. How can you let her, our daughter, treat me like this? Today, she called me the housekeeper. In our home. Tom didn't look up from his paper. Maybe if you didn't look the part, she'd respect you more. You're always cleaning, always in those rags. What do you expect? His words stung, slicing through whatever defenses I had left. I'm trying, Tom. I'm trying to make this a home. But you and your parents, you're teaching her to hate me. He scoffed, folding his newspaper with precision. Alice, you need to stop being so sensitive. She's growing up in a different world than you did. She needs to fit in. Nights turned restless, my thoughts spiraling. Tom's distancing, the casual cruelty of his parents, and now Lily's rejection painted a stark picture. I was an outsider in my own life, my role diminished to that of a silent provider, unseen and unappreciated. As I watched Lily grow into a teenager, her embarrassment of me became more pronounced. Her comments about my outdated clothes and simple manners cut deeper because they echoed Tom's words. She was ashamed to be seen with me, her mother, who had sacrificed everything only to be rendered invisible. Turning 37 wasn't supposed to be a milestone, but I had hoped it would be a turning point for something better, something kinder. With a heart full of tentative hope, I'd booked a table at a nice restaurant downtown. It was a small celebration, just me, Tom, and Lily. Nothing fancy, but something to maybe, just maybe, bring us back together for a night. I got home from work, my spirits buoyed by the thought of a quiet dinner with my family. The apartment was quiet when I walked in, too quiet. Tom and Lily were sitting in the living room, their faces turned towards the TV, looking like they were braced for bad news. Hey, I got a surprise, I said. I'd booked us a table at Marcelo's for dinner to celebrate my birthday, just the three of us. My voice was bright, forcing cheerfulness into the edges of my exhaustion. Tom turned off the TV and looked at me, an eyebrow raised, a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. Alice, seriously, you think we want to go out and celebrate with you? A dropout? What would we even talk about? Tom's words were casual, but they cut deep, his smirk turning into a sneer. Yeah, Mom, it's kind of embarrassing. You wouldn't even know which fork to use. Lily added, her words echoing her father's disdain. I felt my face flush, the sting of their words like a slap. I just thought we could be a family for tonight, I said. Tom laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. A family with you making a fool of yourself? No thanks. Actually, here's my gift to you. He stood up, walked over to his briefcase, and pulled out an envelope, tossing it onto the coffee table with a dramatic flourish. Confused, I picked it up, my hands trembling. It was a divorce application. This is your gift. Yeah, consider yourself free from us. We're done, Alice. I'm taking Lily, and we're moving out. You can keep this place, he said, his words cold and calculated. Lily just nodded, standing up to join her father. I'd rather live with Dad. I can't be seen with you, Mom. It's just too embarrassing. They packed up their things with chilling efficiency. I watched, frozen, as my world was dismantled piece by piece. Not just the physical pieces of our lives, but the last vestiges of any affection, any pretense of a relationship. They left without a goodbye, the door closing with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the empty apartment. The divorce proceedings were quick, clinical, and brutal. Tom's parents testified about my inadequacies, painting me as an uneducated, unfit mother in stark, unforgiving strokes. Even Lily spoke, her voice steady, her words rehearsed. I want to live with my dad. He's better for me. Sitting there in that sterile courtroom, listening to the litany of my supposed failures, I felt something inside me break, or maybe it was something coming together, a realization hardening into resolve. They were all strangers. Their words were no longer capable of wounding me as they once had. I was alone, truly alone. But perhaps that was the freedom I needed. I knew one thing for sure. I needed to prove, if to no one else but myself, that I was capable of much more. That burning resolve led me back to the doors of the college I had left years ago. I enrolled again, older than most of my classmates, and with a fierceness in me that only life's hard knocks can bestow. I hired tutors, spending evenings grappling with investment theories and financial models. My eyes blurred from the strain. Social media was a minefield, though every so often, a photo of Tom, Lily, and that woman, Tom's new partner, would pop up. They looked happy, carefree, living it up in some swanky downtown apartment that screamed luxury. The sting of seeing them so blissful while I was over here piecing myself back together was sharp. But instead of letting it drag me down, I used it as fuel. Each picture, each post pushed me harder. I channeled my anger, my hurt into my studies, turning bitterness into a motivator. Graduation day came, and I was a different woman from the one who had started. You've got what it takes, Alice. Don't let anyone tell you differently, my favorite professor, Dr. Henson, told me during our final meeting. His words were a balm to the raw edges of my pride. With his recommendation, I landed a position at a respected firm, stepping into the world of finance with a determination to rise. The corporate world was another battlefield, but one I was now well equipped to navigate. I started as just another employee, but not for long. Within 3 years, I climbed from the ground floor to department head, my name on an office door, my decisions shaping the company's future. Alongside my career, I revamped my life. I traded my old battered car for something sleek and new, something that hummed under my touch like a promise. My apartment followed, from modest to modern, a high-rise with views of the city that twinkled like the stars I was reaching for. Shopping for new clothes wasn't just about style. It was about armor. Each piece, whether a sharp suit or a sleek dress, was chosen to project the new me, the competent, capable businesswoman. My hair, once always pulled back in a practical ponytail, now fell in stylish waves or was pinned up in chic designs that said I cared about every detail. Only my closest friends knew the extent of my transformation. "You're doing what you were meant to do, Alice. It's like you finally found your stage," my friend Jenna told me over coffee one day, her eyes wide as she took in the changes. "Yeah, I guess I have," I said, sipping my espresso. Tom and Lily and all the pain associated with them faded into the background, becoming just a part of my story, not the defining chapter. There I was, browsing job listings late one night, when I stumbled across an opening that made my heart skip a beat. A department head position at none other than the company where my ex-husband Tom worked. I applied, half out of a deep-seated need to prove myself, half out of the sheer audacity of it all. The interview was next week. I walked in with all the confidence of a woman who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. The interviewers were a panel of 3, each more impressed than the last as we discussed everything from market trends to financial strategies. By the end, they seemed genuinely excited about what I could bring to the table. "Well, Alice, I must say it's refreshing to see such a clear vision and detailed knowledge. We'd be lucky to have you on board," the senior interviewer remarked, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "Thank you. I'm ready to hit the ground running," I replied, my tone steady, my resolve firmer than ever. Meeting my new team and getting to know them made my first day seem like something from a movie. Until Tom's face appeared, the room was full with kind smiles and courteous applause. The look of horror on his face was enough to power the metropolis for several hours. With his mouth hanging open and eyes wide, he appeared as though he had seen a ghost. Mr. Reynolds, the company's head, appeared to find the situation humorous. Placing a hand on my shoulder, he said, "I expect everyone to give Alice all the support she needs. Our reputation is excellent, and I have no doubt that she will take this department to new heights." Tom answered in a less than courteous manner. As the room cleared, he stormed up to Mr. Reynolds, his voice low but angry. "I submitted my application for the position. For what reason did she get it? What is it that she has that I don't?" With a raised eyebrow, Mr. Reynolds looked at Tom and then at me. "Tom, merit was the only factor considered when making the decision. Alice has a far better vision for the department and far more qualifications than you have. She might impart a wealth of knowledge to you. Ask her for advice. Is this a prank of some kind? I take it?" Tom raised his voice and growled, "Tom, I'm not kidding." Mr. Reynolds responded calmly, "I suggest you change your attitude and concentrate on your own responsibilities." Tom, humiliated, did something out of the ordinary. He left after complaining about his stupid boss and tossing his ID badge on the table. Mr. Reynolds shook his head and sighed as he watched Tom leave. "I'm sorry to Alice for that. This is entirely my fault from now on. Why don't you immediately organize your team?" A tiny, satisfied smile played at the corner of my lips as I nodded and watched Tom move down the hallway. I thought his furious steps were lovely music. Later, I overheard Mr. Reynolds conversing on the phone. Yes, he did really resign. "Not after this, please. I cannot recommend him in a positive light. The rest of the day went by fast with planning meetings and introductions. But all the while, one thought remained in my mind. Justice, in its own twisted way, had been served. Like most of the time, Tom had miscalculated me. But this time, I had won. Faster than I could have imagined, Tom stormed out of the office that day, and his career took a severe turn for the worse. Rumors circulated among mutual friends, excited to tell me about Tom's latest lover kicking him and Lily out of her lavish home. In despair, they were compelled to return to living with Tom's parents. I could not help but note the decline of the powerful. Lily, a college student at the time, knocked on my door during this stormy time, demanding as she had always been raised. She blew a little, quiet whistle. "Mom, you truly got better? Whoa, I suppose your decision to dump Dad was successful." She spoke in a calm tone, but there was a trace of severity that had me on edge. "What brings you here, Lily?" I asked. She entered casually and took a seat on my opulent couch, as if she were the owner. "Well, I noticed that you're rich, fashionable, and smart today, and that things are a little tight at Grandpa's. Maybe I could move in here. However, clearly, I would require a sizable allowance." Upon closer inspection, I could see how much Tom had shaped her behavior. Though it had wounded me, there was no disputing the knowledge it offered. "Lily, I believe you ought to go. I will not allow myself to be used by you or anybody else in this way." Her face was full of tears, but they didn't affect me the same way they formerly had. When her pleas failed to persuade me, she burst into wrath. "You're just selfish, just like you always were," she said as she walked out, and her words sounded true in the silence of my flat. I got bits and pieces of news during the next few weeks. Tom had turned to alcohol as a way to cope with his injured ego, and Lily had moved to a new city, possibly in an effort to gain the independence she so desperately desired. Success and new beginnings became the norm for me. I got to know Michael, a colleague whose gentle disposition and quiet strength stood in stark contrast to Tom's aggressive manner. After a while, our friendship developed into love, and we were wed in a modest, joyous ceremony in front of all the people who truly loved us. I had grown stronger, wiser, and kinder as a result of the challenging route. I realized, in addition to losing a family, I had also discovered who I was, and with it, my opportunity at a fulfilling life and true love. I knew I had not only made it through, but had thrived, creating a triumph narrative that was all mine, and I felt ready for whatever lied ahead.
Sometimes, life may be really odd. I once unintentionally threw a scoop of chocolate ice cream upon someone's clothes when we were at the park. Let's just say that I go by Julie, and awkward situations seem to follow me around. I was savoring my favorite ice cream on a bright day when I stumbled across a man sitting on a bench who was engrossed in his phone. "Oh no, I'm so sorry." As soon as the ice cream hit his leg, I blurted out. He raised his head, amused rather than angry. Then he did something unexpected, like laugh. "Guess I needed a little extra chocolate today," he laughed. I felt a little less ashamed after his casual response. In a hurry, I picked up some napkins to tidy up the mess. I tried to shrug it off. "I promise I'm not usually an ice cream attacker." He grinned and waved his hand. "Sit down, it's okay," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I'm James, and thanks to you, I've got a funny story about how my day got better." I grinned back and took a seat. "I'm Julie, and I guess I owe you an ice cream now." We clicked immediately away. James happened to work in IT, not too far from my home office where I worked on web design projects. We discussed everything from technology to movies, and by the time we were going our separate ways, we had arranged a date for the next weekend. As time went on, our relationship was going really well. That is, until the day I got to meet his mother, Mrs. Charles. Although James had said that she was a little bit traditional, nothing could have prepared me for her presence. She was sitting there with a large astrological book open when I walked into their family's house. "Hello, my name is Julie," I said, extending my hand to clasp hers. She gave me a serious once-over while obviously evaluating me, and then she gently took my hand. "James tells me you're a web designer and work from home," she remarked, sounding as though she didn't really work there. I said, feeling my face flush, "Yeah, I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and it's going really well." She merely hummed as she turned the pages of her astrology book. "And when's your birthday, dear?" She, clucking her tongue, rubbed her finger around the pages of her book, I told her. She looked unhappy and remarked, "Oh, that's a tough date. Very challenging and not astrologically compatible with my James." It wasn't easy, but I tried to remain composed. "Well, we're doing just fine so far," I replied. Mrs. Charles grinned, but not in a pleasant way. She was clearly thinking she knew better because of the way she smiled. "Oh dear, we'll see. These things have a tendency of eventually revealing their actual selves." The entire experience was stressful. I could feel her subtle jabs at my history, my work, and even my fashion sense in everything she said. It was clear that she wasn't thinking of me for James. James and I made the decision to be married after 5 years of courting, putting up with her icy demeanor, and generally navigating the ups and downs of life. Yes, it had been 5 years since the incident involving the ice cream, but nothing truly could topple us. James turned to me one lazy Friday when we were watching old comedies on the couch. His eyes were serious, which was unusual for him. He said, "Julie, I've been thinking," and my stomach gave me that strange butterfly-like flip. "What's up?" My heart was beating, but I tried to seem casual as I asked. "I kind of wish we could watch awful movies together for the rest of our lives. Shall we officially declare it now?" It wasn't like him at all. His smile was modest but eager. I chuckled, largely in relief, since this was what I had been dying to have. "Are you asking me to marry you without a ring, James Charles?" "I am," he smiled. "Damn right. But I promise I'll get you a ring that'll make up for this lame proposal." When he held me, I had the impression that everything was perfect. But organizing the wedding was a completely different affair, particularly because Mrs. Charles insisted on her viewpoint at every opportunity. We were choosing up wedding invites one evening, and of course she was there, watching me closely like a hawk. Looking at the floral pattern James and I had selected, she scowled and said, "You're not seriously considering this design, are you?" "It's far too girly." "It's what we want, Mom." James remarked, "I like it too." Always sticking up for me. To be more firm than anything else, I added extra. I refused to give in to her influence over every choice we made. "It's your wedding," she groaned, obviously not feeling well. "But remember, the invitation sets the tone for the whole event." The big day arrived sooner than I thought. Despite Mrs. Charles's persistent meddling, everything was flawless, beautiful even. James looked stunning, and his smile said it all as I approached him down the aisle. Our marriage ceremony took place outside behind a large ancient oak tree. The celebrant, Henry, was a close friend of James's who had gotten to know us both well beyond our marriage. "Do you, Julie, accept James as your legally wedded spouse, to be had and maintained from this day on, for better or worse, richer or worse, in health or illness, till death do you part? And from this day forward, for better or worse, richer or worse, sick or well, until death do you part. Do you, James, accept Julie as your legally wedded wife, to have and to hold? We exchanged rings, and when James slid the ring onto my finger, it felt like we had triumphed over everything that life had thrown at us, including the stress of wedding planning and Mrs. Charles's remarks. Henry remarked, "You may now kiss the bride," and James didn't hesitate to do so. Everyone cheered when he planted a kiss on me. It was real and our moment, so it felt even better than a scene from a movie. After 3 years of cohabitation, everything seemed to be going well, but purchasing our own house was a significant move. Our weekends were spent viewing properties, talking about our preferences, and calculating our budget. We discovered a house one bright Monday that met nearly all of our requirements. It had a large kitchen and a large backyard. It was gorgeous. The sole issue? There was a lakeside pool there. I'd confided in James about my phobia of the water, which dates back to my childhood near-drowning experience. I haven't been near a lake or even bathtub pools since. James, though, bless him, cherished every other aspect of the house. "Listen, Julie, I know it has a lake pool, but bear with me." While we inspected the house, James tried to allay my concerns by saying, "Everything else is perfect, and we're getting it at a great price." While contemplating, I bit my lip. The price of the house was almost too wonderful to refuse, and it was very gorgeous. "All right, James, but I'm not going near that lake pool. You are aware of that, correct?" James put his arm around me and drew me in. "Naturally, sweetie. We'll work things out. We could add to it or something later on. We're not required to use it at this time. It was like a dream come true when we moved here." Although the neighborhood and the house felt ideal, Mrs. Charles soon stopped over to check out our new home. I prepared myself for her typical remarks. She was continually finding a way to express her dissatisfaction, particularly with regard to money and my work. Her lips tight, her gaze taking in every detail, she strolled around our living room. At last, she spoke something, her voice full of uncertainty. "Isn't that a big house? It must have been expensive. Are you certain you can handle the mortgage, James?" James, the ever-calm mediator, attempted to diffuse the situation. "We've got this under control, Mom." Julie and I took turns helping out around the house. "It's not solely my fault," I added, fed up with the notion that James was depending on me. "You're correct, Mrs. Charles. You know that I work too. This place is ours, and my web design job helped us get it. It pays well." She snorted, obviously not buying my story. "Are you spending all day on your computer at home? It doesn't seem like it makes enough money to support a facility like this. Not at all like a real job, more like a pastime." Her visit continued in a whirl of forced smiles and awkward subject shifts. I finally let out a deep breath that I had been holding till she finally departed. James pulled me in with a hard hug. "Julie, ignore her. The reality is known to us. What counts is that we're doing this together." As weeks went by, our new house started to feel like home. I set up my office and it became my safe space. From there, I worked on web design projects that not only paid well, but also showed that I could contribute just as much to our life together. James took care of the yard and kept up with the lake pool, even though I never went near it. Then, one sunny afternoon, the incident happened. Mrs. Charles had decided to drop by, supposedly to bring some of James's old stuff from his childhood. But I knew she had more on her mind. She always had a way of turning a simple gesture into something more critical. We were out in the backyard, making small talk, when her eyes landed on the lake pool. "Julie, I never see you or James in that lake pool. Don't you ever swim?" Her question caught me off guard. I took a deep breath, figuring honesty might stop the conversation from going further. "Actually, I'm afraid of water. I had a bad experience as a kid, almost drowned." I haven't felt comfortable around lake pools or large bodies of water since. Her expression changed from curiosity to something different. I couldn't quite figure out what it meant. Was it disbelief? Disdain? Whatever it was, it didn't feel supportive. Well, that's just unusual, isn't it? A grown woman afraid of a little water? She scoffed. I felt my face flush with embarrassment. I tried to laugh it off, but the conversation left me feeling uneasy. Later I found out it wasn't just an awkward moment. It was the start of rumors. Mrs. Charles, in her usual way, had shared my fear of water with her friends and family. But she had twisted the story. By the time it made its way back to me, the story was that I was mentally unstable because of my phobia. A friend who'd heard the rumor asked me, "Julie, is it true what they're saying? That you're too scared to even look at your own lake pool?" I felt hurt and betrayed, so I talked to James about it. He was just as surprised. "She said that? That's it. I'm talking to her. This has to stop." James confronted his mother and things exploded. He made it clear her behavior was out of line, but instead of backing down, Mrs. Charles got even worse. She started accusing me of manipulating James and trying to keep him away from her. One afternoon, she called me directly, her voice sharp and accusing. "You're just trying to keep me out of the house. What are you hiding, Julie? Meeting someone else while my son's at work?" Her words were like poison, meant to hurt me. I was stunned. "Mrs. Charles, that's ridiculous. I would never cheat on James. You know that." But she wouldn't listen. "Oh, I know your type. You think you're clever, but I know what's going on." I told James about the call, and he was just as shocked. "She said that? That's insane, Julie. You know it's not true, and I know it's not true," he said, trying to laugh it off. But I was shaken. The fact that his own mother would go so far to make me look bad was disturbing. James agreed, and we decided it was time to set some boundaries. After that, Mrs. Charles's visits became less frequent, and when she did come over, James made sure to be there so he could step in if needed. Things started to settle down, but a few weeks after the big blow-up with her, I began noticing small things that seemed off. Little things that wouldn't mean much to anyone else, but to me, they felt like signs. It started with the feeling of being watched at first. I thought I was just imagining it when I was at the grocery store picking out vegetables. I got this strange feeling like someone was staring at me. I turned around and sometimes caught a glimpse of someone looking away quickly. I told myself it was nothing, probably just other shoppers. But then it happened again, this time at the laundromat. I was folding clothes when that same feeling came over me. I glanced up and saw a man standing across the street, just staring straight at me. I blinked, and he was gone. "You're being paranoid, Julie," I muttered to myself as I shoved the clothes into my bag. But the real shock came one evening at home. James was working late, and I was in the living room catching up on some web design work. That feeling of being watched hit me again. I peeked out the window, and there he was, the same man from the laundromat. He was standing across the street, barely visible in the dim streetlight, but definitely there, definitely watching. I grabbed my phone and called James, my voice a bit shaky. "James, I think someone's been following me. I've seen him a few times now." James stayed calm, maybe too calm. "Julie, love, you're probably just tired. You've been working a lot lately. Maybe you should take a break." I tried to believe him, thinking maybe it was all in my head. I started doing yoga and tried meditation to calm down, but the uneasy feeling wouldn't leave. I just couldn't shake the sense that I was being watched. Then it happened again. I was leaving the grocery store, and there he was, standing in the parking lot. This time I was ready. I quickly pulled out my phone and snapped a picture before he could walk away. Finally, I had proof. This wasn't just my imagination. That evening, I showed the photo to James. I could tell he finally understood. Okay, that's not normal, he admitted. Later that night, we were walking home from a nearby restaurant when James suddenly grabbed the arm of a man passing by. It was him, the man from the photo. "Why are you following my wife?" James's voice was tense, and he held the man's arm tightly. The guy looked cornered, his eyes darting around before he let out a sigh. "Look, I'm a private investigator. I was hired to watch her, that's all." James's face darkened. "Hired by who?" "Your mother," the investigator confessed, looking embarrassed. "She wanted proof of infidelity." James was enraged. That very moment, he took out his phone and dialed his mother. "What the hell, Mom? Have you employed someone to trail Julie? And that's it. Until you behave like a respectable human being, you will no longer be in our life." By the time the heated debate ended, James was shaking with rage. He apologized to me several times on the way home. James went out the following day and purchased cameras for every area of our property. "As soon as he installs them, nobody will violate our privacy in the same way again," he pledged. James proposed that we take a trip to decompress after everything that had happened. "Julie, let's just go away from this whole situation." One evening, as we sat on the couch fatigued in a house that now felt too loud with all the strain, he murmured, "Just you and me, somewhere peaceful." I didn't require persuasion. "Yes, let's do it." I had to take a break badly. A tiny home in the mountains, far from everything and everyone, was the choice James and I made. It was flawless. There were no distractions. It was just the two of us, the fresh air and stunning views. There, amid the stillness of nature, I felt all my worry dissipating. We hiked during the day and cuddled up by the fire in the evenings. It was a relief to be able to laugh, breathe, and be myself without any worries. I was beaming when we got home, not just from the mountain sunshine, but also from a fresh sense of happiness. I had a baby. A few weeks after our return, we learned, and while it made us happy, it also made me a little nervous. I didn't want Mrs. Charles to know yet, in particular. We had been waiting so long for this little miracle, and I was worried that the stress she could bring would damage it. It was simple to keep the pregnancy a secret when I worked from home. The doctor remarked that although my tummy remained tiny and I didn't go out much, it was a bit odd and nothing to be concerned about. He told us during one of my visits that every pregnancy is unique. It got tougher to hide my condition as my 9th month drew near. It was finally time, James and I decided, to break the news. We invited all of our family members to a little party we had planned at our house, akin to a baby shower. I still thought it was appropriate to invite Mrs. Charles in spite of everything that had transpired. I inhaled deeply and called her number, my heart pounding. Before she answered, the phone rang 5 times. "Hello? Hello? This is Julie," I said, attempting to maintain a calm tone. "I had some news to share. James and I are going to have a child. We would love to have you join us for a small celebration that we are holding next week." There was a long silence, so long that I thought maybe I had said something wrong. Then, in an unexpectedly serene voice, she added, "I'll be there." When the celebration day finally arrived, our house was a flurry of laughing and excitement. Speculating about the gender of the baby, our family fretted about baby outfits. I interacted with the guests while feeling our baby's soft kicks with my palm, frequently resting on my tiny tummy. Everything was good until the arrival of Mrs. Charles, my worst nightmare. She remained quiet much of the afternoon, muttering to anybody who would listen that my pregnancy wasn't real. "Observe her," she remarked sarcastically. "She's barely visible and 9 months pregnant. She's fabricating this whole thing to trick my son and steal his money." Fortunately, There was little impact from her remarks. The visitors, aware of her past of persistent dislike towards me, rolled their eyes and laughed. They wrote off her charges as simply another of her irrational tales. Mrs. Charles, though, continued on. She stomped out, muttering fiercely, "I'll prove it to all of you." Her face was flushed, either from embarrassment or fury. Filled with a mixture of fury and resolve to put a stop to this absurdity, I trailed behind her to the courtyard beside the lake pool. "Maybe we just have a conversation." "You know that this isn't true," I begged, managing to remain composed despite the tumultuous emotions roiling within of me. Anger twisted her face. "Preserve it." "I am fully aware of your intentions," she sternly stated. I was about to give up on persuading her when I felt a strong shove from behind. I tripped and staggered forward. As the lake's edge drew nearer, I found myself slipping into the water without realizing it. I started to sink and felt the same dread that had gripped me as a child. Fear. As I strained, with my mind screaming for aid, darkness began to creep into my vision. I woke up in a hospital bed with the sound of machinery beeping softly all around me. James stood there, holding my hand tightly, his face pallid and anxious. "How's the baby?" I stammered, speaking hardly audible above a whisper. James gave me a tight grip, tears welling up in his eyes. The doctors were forced to perform an urgent delivery. "He's currently receiving intensive care," he muttered, his voice trembling with terror. Tears began to fill up in my eyes as my heart fell. In an incubator, our infant, our tiny guy, was fighting for his life. I woke up the following morning still in disbelief. My thoughts were stuck in a horrible cycle, replaying everything that had happened the night before. I turned to James, feeling weak but desperate to find out what had truly happened. "You need to check the security footage from last night," I said, turning to face James in a trembling but urgent voice. "I got shoved into the lake pool by your mom. It was not a mishap." James appeared perplexed and nearly unwilling to accept it. "Are you sure, Julie? Although Mom can be strict, pushing you physically? That sounds nothing like her." With my stomach in knots, I begged him to just check the cameras, fearing he wouldn't take me seriously. With a cautious nod, James took out his laptop to view the security footage that our installed camera had captured. As he sped through the footage, there was a lot of tension in the room. His expression went from uncertainty to shock to terror as the reality was revealed on TV. "I'm so sorry, Julie. Oh my God." He stared at me, his face pallid, and he muttered, "I can't believe she did this." He phoned the police right away, leaving the laptop by his side. The evidence was indisputable, and his mother was promptly taken into custody. The trial was scheduled after Mrs. Charles was charged. "It was all a joke," she said in defense, a means to show that I was lying about being pregnant. She said she believed my tummy was a fake, and that when I entered the water, it would fall off, making my lie obvious to everyone. The witness accounts and the footage, however, painted a different picture. The jurors rejected her explanation of a mishandled practical joke. She was found guilty of reckless endangerment and assault. She received a 2-year prison sentence from the court, who delivered a harsh ruling. He also mandated that she reimburse us for our medical expenses and our baby's rehabilitation because our son was born prematurely as a result of the shock of the event. Mrs. Charles was forced to liquidate her home in order to pay the fines and compensation. The strain on us was enormous as our kid battled through his early months, receiving numerous medical procedures and therapy to catch up in his development. There were therapy sessions, hospital visits, and nonstop anxiety every day. But with constant attention and medical assistance, our young boy eventually started to flourish. I got closer to James through it all. Our relationship was only made stronger by the difficulties we encountered, and we experienced unanticipated growth in our love for our kid and each other. In order to ensure the safety of our family, I made a crucial choice as Mrs. Charles's release date approached. I was successful in getting a restraining order against her. She was prohibited from communicating in any way with us, particularly with our son. Though not an easy choice, it was one that had to be made. The most crucial thing in our lives was keeping our child safe, and we couldn't take any more chances with our well-being. One night, when we had put our son to bed, James gave me a kind grin. You know, I feel fortunate in spite of everything. We have him, we have each other, and we have the future. Not only did it mark the close of a trying chapter in our lives, but it also signaled the beginning of a happy, healing, and hopeful one.
I'm Luna, and I'm 35 years old. My spouse, Mason, is 3 years my senior, and we were married 6 years ago. My dear father died of a disease and left me with a sizable inheritance, which drastically altered my life. I bought a new house with my bequest, which I treasure very much. This house has a comfortable aroma of freshly cut wood, and I can't help but think how happy my father would be to see it. My father used to live alone in our previous home, which was only 10 minutes' walk from our apartment. My father died from a fall not long after I moved out a few years ago, following the death of my mother. I had to make the tough choice to tear down our old family home and replace it with a new one after receiving the inheritance. The happy memories we created there, even though the old house's structure is gone, I think will always be in our hearts. Mason frequently cited my father when discussing the importance of starting over with a new house. I initially believed he was attempting to console me, but that quickly proved to be untrue. Mason suddenly requested me to fill out and mail divorce papers one evening. Perplexed, I inquired about his meaning. He told me quite frankly that we were divorcing and that the new house he was having constructed with my father's money was for his mistress, who he was going to live with. I was taken aback upon discovering his adultery, in sharp contrast to how he described our relationship. He acknowledged having an affair for approximately 9 months, during which time he described his mistress as charming, caring, and truly in love with him. Mason said he would take the house as alimony, saying he had no further benefits from our 6-year marriage that had produced children, and that he always hated returning home to me. I went to Mason for solace since I was upset, but he gave me the finger instead. He said that my behavior influenced him to have an affair and ultimately decide to leave, and he held me accountable for his actions. He called it my alimony and gave me an envelope containing $12,000, telling me to be thankful since he was about to move into the new house. Feeling both overwhelmed and composed at the same time, I gave the envelope back to him and declined the money. Constructed with memories and inheritance in mind, the mansion was intended to be a haven, but it was now the focus of a devastating discovery. I said unequivocally, "If you no longer love me, there's no reason for us to stay married." And I consented to the divorce. I don't require cash. Mason expressed amazement at how easily I came to terms with our marriage's dissolution. He acknowledged and said, "Well, if you say so, just don't ask for it back later." He packed up his things and departed a few days later, taking the keys to our freshly constructed home with him. But soon after he moved out, Mason contacted me hysterically, his voice strained with fear. "What actions did you take?" When the police arrived at the house, they discussed trespassing charges and warrants. "What is happening?" He claimed that while he was with his lover, the cops had broken in and demanded to know if they knew it was lawful to do what they were doing. "You entered this residence using a stolen key, which is theft and trespassing, which is why we are here. Are you aware of that?" the cops said. Shaken and disoriented, Mason turned to face his lover, who looked at him with equal confusion. "This is your home, right?" she muttered. "You mentioned that you wanted to show me." He angrily yelled, "Be quiet and stay out of this," to which one cop cut him off. "Sorry to disrupt, but we need to handle this at the station." Mason called me desperate, caught between his woman and the police. "Why is this occurring right now? How did you act?" Calmly, "I haven't done much," was my response. "I just reported that there were strangers in my house and that my house keys were stolen. It makes sense to contact the police." I had already reported the incident, reverted to my maiden name Luna, and filed the divorce papers. "This is my home, Mason," I firmly stated as I went on. "Didn't you agree to give it to us as alimony?" "I never consented to that," he disagreed. "You may easily manipulate events to support your story." "Are you kidding? How on earth do you think you own that house?" "The person on the house contract is me. I own the land and I paid for it with my father's inheritance," I declared categorically. Mason said, "But your father said it was for us. You were my husband at the time. Now that we are divorced, we hardly know one another. Why do you believe that this is your land?" I snapped back. "When he became sick, my father made the sensible decision to give me the land rights in order to avoid any issues in the event that something occurred to him. Maybe he anticipated something similar, which is why he suggested tearing down the old house and erecting a new one. I could see more clearly than ever before that property and money might readily turn into sources of conflict." Mason's ordinarily composed manner began to make sense to me after I agreed to the divorce. I thought, "So you planned this all along?" "I did nothing wrong," he shot back, sounding defensive. "From the beginning, you have misinterpreted every detail." Seeing him so naive and believing he would be content with his mistress was almost comical. "Stop being so silly," I shot back. "You hold me responsible for the divorce, the affair, and the house's loss. Now that you're caught between your fiancé and the authorities, how does that feel?" Mason, obviously unhappy with the turn of events, could only moan in response. "Hating me is the wrong path. Your whole mess is what you're doing. Do you know the saying, you reap what you sow? You deserve this." Mason lost control of his temper at that point and started yelling accusations into the phone. But all of a sudden, he was cut off. "Excuse me, are you the former wife of Mr. Gold? He's making a mess at your place. Please, might we have a word?" The call had been taken over by a policeman. After giving the officer a brief explanation of the circumstances, she expressed empathy for how challenging this must have been for me. Mason was later brought to the police station along with his mistress. Mason argued that it wasn't trespassing because the house was a gift from me. With genuine surprise, his mistress admitted that she was unaware that they were intruding. Mason attempted to bolster his allegations at the station with purported evidence, but in the end, the mistress's account was deemed reliable, and she was just given a warning before being released. However, Mason was fined after being found guilty of trespassing and larceny. Then it came up that, upon his release, Mason had named me as his guarantor, presumably so his controlling parents wouldn't know. The officer gave me this information, obviously frustrated. Why should I act as his surety? Now that we're divorced and essentially strangers, I firmly replied. I declined because I no longer have any relationship with Mr. Gold. His parents live close by. Kindly get in touch with them. The officer informed Mason, who was visibly frustrated. His parents, who were already aware of our divorce, due to his infidelity, were not yet informed of his attempt to take the new house. The police call had brought them fully up to speed on the situation. Reluctantly, after his parents requested more details, I visited Mason's parents' house. When I knocked on the door and started to explain, his mother immediately cut me off. "No need to apologize," she said. "It's all my foolish son's fault." "But did you know about this?" I inquired. "Well, my son is here with his mistress, a much younger woman," she revealed. We allowed them into the living room to discuss the situation. To my astonishment, Mason had brought his mistress along, creating a tense atmosphere. The living room scene unfolded with Mason, the young woman, and my stern-looking father-in-law, Russell. "Russell, it's been a while. I'm sorry for the delay," I greeted them. "Luna, thanks for coming," Russell responded. "I apologize for calling you after the divorce, but I've heard Mason's side of the story. However, I can't fully trust someone who's been arrested for trespassing. Can you tell me your side?" I recounted everything as requested. Throughout my explanation, Mason and his mistress kept their heads bowed, avoiding eye contact. "What were you thinking? Trying to take Luna's new house? Are you insane?" Russell demanded of Mason. "It's not that simple," Mason interjected. "How is that even possible?" Russell retorted, clearly frustrated. "Your story is completely different from hers." Apparently, Mason had spun his version of events before I arrived. "What were you told?" I asked. Russell explained. "He claimed you willingly transferred the house to him, then changed your story and reported him, leading to his wrongful arrest." "Really?" He said that. I was incredulous. It's true that when we discussed the house, I didn't object, but that doesn't mean I agreed to transfer ownership to him. To suddenly claim the house as yours and report it is beyond comprehension. "I'm so sorry, Luna, for having such a son," Mason's mother apologized. "What are you saying, Mom?" Mason argued. "I'm telling the truth. Luna wasn't agreeing. She was too stunned to speak." I nodded in agreement with Russell. Despite everything, Mason continued to make excuses. "Anyway, you never mentioned owning the land. If I'd known, I wouldn't have done this." "If I had told you, you'd have found another excuse to do the same thing," I replied. "How can you say that?" "Were you spending a lot on her?" Mason asked, gesturing towards his mistress. "No. Why would you think that?" I responded. "Right after our divorce, I happened to run into one of your colleagues. When I mentioned the divorce, I received some shocking information that left me reeling." I continued. Mason's college had looked uncomfortable during our conversation. No offense, but I thought it might happen. The colleague had said, "What do you mean? Didn't he tell you?" I asked, the colleague shifting uncomfortably. The colleague finally spilled everything, revealing details that I should have known sooner. I wasn't initially aware of the full extent of Mason's actions, but a conversation with one of his colleagues soon brought everything to light. Mason had been openly bragging about his mistress, a woman 15 years his junior, lavishing her with expensive bags and jewelry. He boasted about his plans, even sharing that he intended to divorce me to marry his mistress, capitalizing on her recent inheritance from her deceased father to build a new house. He said, "Once the house is built, I'll divorce Luna and somehow claim it. No matter the opposition, I'll get it. Then my young new wife and I will live in the big house." The colleague recounted, it seemed the house built with my father's inheritance was not just a home, but a grand gesture intended for his proposal to her. Hearing this, I confronted Mason. "I've heard everything. Do you still insist you did nothing wrong? I asked, my frustration evident. Mason, visibly flustered, attempted to justify his actions. Well, yes. I bought her gifts. So what? I used my own money and gave Luna her living expenses. She's not my destined partner. This woman is. I brought her here today to announce our marriage. His parents, present during this confession, reacted with shock. However, the most astonishing response came from the mistress herself. Mary, did I ever say that we were even dating? She declared. What do you mean? Mason asked, bewildered. Exactly that, she replied firmly. I'm not in a relationship with him. I only approached him for a sugar daddy arrangement. I told you from the start that I was looking for someone for that kind of arrangement, and even married men were acceptable. You agreed to it initially, but now what are you talking about? That's creepy, she stated. Mason went pale, stunned by her revelation. At that point, I asked her, so why did you come here with him today? The mistress explained, I came to ask for more time to pay the alimony. I knew he was married, so it was an affair, and I was prepared to pay the alimony. But I'm still a student. A student? How old are you? Russell, Mason's father, interjected, looking bewildered. I lost my parents early and have been engaging in sugar dating to pay for college. I sold all the gifts for living expenses, she confessed. This revelation turned the entire room silent, leaving everyone to digest the depth of deception and the surprising turn of events. As the discussion unfolded, the mistress clarified her financial situation, indicating she didn't have savings to immediately start paying the alimony. I've just secured a job and can start paying alimony from my salary, she explained. So you came here to ask me to wait for the alimony? I asked. Yes, that's right, she confirmed. Mason, who had been silently listening, suddenly erupted in anger. Didn't you hear her? Unfortunately, she never intended to marry or even date you. But that's separate from the alimony you owe, I pointed out, trying to steer the conversation back to the matter at hand. What about saying you wanted a house? Mason challenged the mistress. I meant I'd want a house someday when I marry. It wasn't about marrying you, she replied, clarifying her intentions. Mason exclaimed in disbelief. I was suddenly taken to that house, thinking it was yours. Then the police came, and I learned it was your wife's. The mistress bowed deeply to me, indicating her respect and acknowledging that all of this confusion was spurred by Mason's misunderstandings. All right, I said, seeing an opportunity to resolve at least one issue. If you promise to pay the alimony properly, I'll wait for the payment. But promise me no more sugar dating. It might not end simply next time. I promise I'll never do it again, she said earnestly. Turning to Mason, I addressed the financial aspects of our separation. Expect a claim for alimony from me without delay. Alimony? What are you talking about? Mason asked, taken aback and not expecting to pay alimony himself. You said you didn't need alimony when you returned the money, I reminded him. I gave you $122,000, and now you're asking for more. That's not what we agreed on. Mason protested. I don't recall any agreement. I replied, you returned the $122,000 I gave you, saying you didn't need it. What I meant was that I didn't need such a trivial amount for alimony. Do you have any idea how much alimony for infidelity is? It's $30,000, I clarified. And you're also at fault for not having children in the 6 years we were married. Mason suddenly accused, changing the subject. At that moment, a loud slap echoed through the room. Someone asked, "What are you doing, Mason?" He held his cheek, clearly stunned by the impact. "Are you serious? Do you think her inability to have children is her fault?" I asked, incredulous at his audacity. "Enough with jokes, Dad," Mason's father interrupted, turning to him. "Don't tell me you're blaming Luna for your affair, too." Mason stubbornly stated, "Well, that's how it is. I shouldn't have tied the knot with her. It resembles fraud." "How on earth did you think that?" I put into the test. "Your parents desired to have grandchildren. They decided it would be best to separate if she was unable to conceive. I chose her for that reason," Mason's father remarked, looking plainly upset. "We must have raised you incorrectly if you really think that. Your mother waited 8 years to become pregnant. Before Mason was born, Deborah, Mason's mother, had to go through 8 arduous years of intensive reproductive treatments. Observing others have a simple time starting children while she battled caused her great stress and sadness. Tears were now streaming down her cheeks as she listened to the drama play out, a silent witness to the grief her son's actions had brought back. Russell, Mason's father, finally said, "Leave this house now," clearly disappointed. Mason posed the obvious question, "Why?" Russell replied, "You're a long-awaited son, and I can't bear to look at you now." His voice was laden with anguish. "Remain away until you have a true understanding of your mistakes." "But where ought I to go?" Mason questioned, a hint of desperation in his tone. "Go back to our apartment," I said. "We've already canceled that flat. It was unnecessary to keep with the new house. I immediately canceled it after calling the police. There is nowhere for you to go back to." Mason realized he had nowhere to go and was clearly shaken. He attributed his mistress's actions to his frustration. "You are to blame. You now claim you never meant to marry me, even though all the money has been spent. It is a scam," she answered calmly, saying, "I was upfront about it being a sugar relationship. I never made gift or money requests. Feel free to file a lawsuit. But don't forget about the alimony. I have documentation of our agreement." I added, observing Mason become agitated. He stumbled and said, "Wait, please wait." I ignored his request and called his parents to let them know what was going on before leaving their home. Later, after learning Mason no longer resided at his parents' home, I retained legal counsel and issued a demand letter for alimony. I ensured that it wasn't delivered there. The receptionist at his place of employment questioned, perplexed as she studied the letter, "Why is it being sent here?" "Sending such documents to residential and employment addresses is feasible," I clarified. "Is this what this is about?" she asked, observing Mason's pallid, trembling appearance. "Yes," I said. "I simply stated the facts. I was not requested to be silent. It is his own fault." The demand letter that Mason's employer received immediately became public knowledge of his activities, including his engagement in sugar dating. His professional reputation took a hit as this revelation caused a larger conversation among his peers. Mason made the decision to go from his position, stating that he was departing on his terms, following a string of humiliating defeats and being unable to handle the rumors and murmurs. His troubles didn't end there. Feeling that he was a victim of marital fraud, he sought for free legal help. The legal advisor was not supportive, though. The advisor said, "We have seen cases similar to yours, but based on the evidence you have provided, this isn't considered fraud. At first, you consented to a sugar daddy relationship. If you later felt something, that was entirely your fault. If you want to sue, you can, but it will probably be a financial waste." Mason made the decision to drop the lawsuit after taking the advice. He'd eventually confided in me, feeling dejected and regretting his previous actions. I'm not sure what I was contemplating. I had no idea how important you were, even after 6 years of dating. He begged sincerely, I swear I'll make you happy this time and won't let myself be distracted by others. He begged me, but I was unmoved. I made a clear decision. I declined, I retorted firmly. Why? Following so much pleading. He did not give up. I had realized during those 6 years that Mason was not a good person. He tried to take what was rightfully mine, put all the blame on me, and then came back brazenly when he had lost everything, expecting to make amends. Why would I want to be back with someone who is so self-centered? I inquired. You don't have to put it that way, said Mason. The same things you said to me once. Still, I was determined. Knowing his current situation, I firmly said, never contact me again. After that, I hung up, erased all of his contact details, and modified my phone number. A few days later, something unanticipated happened. I was told by one of the neighbors, your ex-husband came to the house the other day. He made a disturbance, so we had to chase him away. What did he have in mind? Shocked, I pondered out loud. To scare him off, the local ladies, who were aware of the circumstances, had even feigned to call the police. I haven't seen him since, so I don't know where he is or what his circumstances are right now. However, I have no doubt that he is not living a happy life.